So my name is Liz Kirchhoff, and I'm actually an adult services librarian at a fairly local library at Barrington Library. And I've been teaching this class that we're talking today about probably for, I would say, maybe 5 years at my own library. And I started to start talking about it at some other places because so many people have questions about this service. So we're going to talk about a bunch of things today. And I'm going to give you a little bit of resources at the end to learn a little bit more. But basically what we're going to do is we are going to run over like what Etsy is in general. We'll get into how to use it generally as a shopper, how to search it, then how to list and navigate, and then finally how to promote or to market what you've done. So it's that promotion and the marketing part that I get really excited about, but it's all good. And we'll have a lot of stuff that we can learn today, and I'll show you where you can learn a lot more. So if you all are here, you probably know a whole lot already about Etsy, about what it is and kind of what it can do for you. So what it basically is an e-commerce site for handmade and vintage items, essentially. So one of the things I think about when I think about this service is like, and also sort of how you'll use it as a seller is like, you know, I can go and buy a bag that looks kind of similar to that one there at like Target. So why would I go here? I go here where it maybe is going to cost me more because I like to know that there is a story behind the thing that I'm making. I like to know that it's benefiting somebody in my area maybe. And I think it kind of, we're working on marketing of feeling sort of. So one of the things I like about this is very unique stuff. A lot of stuff you're not necessarily going to see in the store. It's a great place for supplies. A lot of people overlook this for supplies, but this is a fantastic place to get interesting beads and fabric and all sorts of things for the crafts that you're going to be making. So this is excellent for that. I particularly think it's good for bags, for jewelry, for art, for crafts, anything like that. This is essentially one giant site, enormous, enormous site. It has like, I don't know, 10, 15 million items on it. And each of those items live within a small store. And that's kind of where you guys come in. So let's talk first about how to just generally navigate the site and how to shop. So you guys probably know a lot of this, so I'm going to zip through it really, really fast, but this is just a really quick primer for those of you who maybe don't know it. So as y'all know, you can shop by the categories right up at the top of the screen here. You can also shop by product name. So I am desperately looking for a dog Halloween costume, because who wouldn't it be? So I can search for that. And I can see that I have 25,600. So I will find something, I'm sure. I can also search by a store if I know the store name. So there is a store that I've shopped at a bunch of times called Obvious State. So I can find them here. So I can get to either their items. I can also get to the store in general. And I can go through their information, the policies, that type of thing, and then see everything that they currently have listed. So let's talk a little bit about actually shopping here. So I'm in my Obvious State search here, and I am looking through these things, and I really like this, say. So if I want to save it for later, I can do that. I can also go on back and, sorry, let me make this a little smaller because I keep losing it. I can go on back and save the whole site, the entire shop. So that's totally a thing that you can do if you just like everything that they do and you want to come back to it. If I want to learn a little bit more about this person, about this shop, I can click into that page that we were talking about, the shop page on a whole. And then if you click on the name, you can see a little bit of information about them. And then you can see some of the favorite things that they have. and then you can search. So this is kind of nice because it gives you an idea a little bit about who these people are and what they're about. You can also read their reviews, which is really, really important for you to look at, obviously as a shopper, but also as somebody who is going to be hopefully getting some sales. You want to look at some of those reviews to sort of see what people have to say. Each of the products also have their own reviews. So say I am looking at this, I can see reviews, assuming somebody has reviewed it. So I can see actually the reviews for the whole site here. So I can see the things that people like and the things that people don't like. So we know this is all really standard shopping sort of stuff. So I won't beat that, dead horse. And then obviously to purchase, you're going to want to have a credit card, an Apple Pay, or a PayPal account. So now let's talk about actually selling. So when you're actually going to sell, you're going to have to kind of imagine, if you will, because I am logged in, but if you're not logged in, you'll see up here something that says sell on Etsy. And that's kind of going to be where you get started. So I would like to commend you on your excellent timing, all of you, because this is like the peak time that you want to get started. So we are coming into the holiday shopping season, and it's the best possible time. If you can get going now before Black Friday, it is ideal. So usually right around this time of the year, I tell people like the goal for you, if you want to get in on those Black Friday, Cyber Monday sales, now somewhere between now and like the end of October is really the best possible time for you to get going. That way you're a little bit established before it actually hits to Black Friday. You can offer some sales and really kind of take advantage of how much they ramp up their promotion and the marketing that they just give you for free. So this is excellent timing. So we're going to talk through a couple of things. So you're going to go ahead and start your site by clicking on that Start Selling on Etsy, which is going to be on the top of the page. It'll also be on the bottom of the pages if you don't have an account already. So basically, Etsy will take you through the process of setting up your account and what they're going to ask you for. A little bit of kind of not super thrilling information. They're going to want a shop name. They'll have you give them some information about like the appearance that you want for your store. You will give them profile information and some general information. And then there's also a little bit of payment information that they want. So there's going to be two pieces of payment that they're going to ask you for. So one of them is going to be a credit card number. The reason that you give them a credit card number is so that you can pay for the listing fees, and we'll get to those at the end. The other reason, other thing you're going to want to give them is the bank account information. There's a lot of ways you can do this. You can open a bank account that's just for this. If you wanted to do that, a lot of people use online banks like Ally and stuff like that for this. This is purely like so that they have somewhere to deposit the money that you make. So I'm assuming you're all going to make millions of dollars doing this. So we got to give them some way to get that money to you. So that's the piece that you're going to need to give them. All of the things that you're going to tell them, even down to the shop name, all can get changed later. So if you are creating your store now and you realize later on, like, I don't like that at all. Like I thought it was being funny, but I'm not funny. You can go back and change all of that information. So the place that you're going to go in and do that is going to be right up here in your shop manager. And we're going to click right into that. So this is my placeholder store. I have just one little tiny thing in there that I very much hope nobody buys because I like to have this store for an example. So we're going to walk through a couple of things, but essentially when you finish that setup for your store, the very first option is going to be to list your first item. So when you do that, it'll take you to a page that says listings. And you're going to say add a listing up here. So when you click into this button up at the top right-hand corner, It's going to ask you for a whole bunch of information. And what I always really recommend that people do here is write down a lot of, or like keep a document even of what you give this. So the tags that you give it, which we'll talk a little bit more about, the types of titles, the information that you are writing up about your actual product, that kind of thing. Put all of that stuff in your document. And then next time you create a new listing, you can just kind of copy and paste. You'll have to still change some things to sort of kind of tailor it to that new item, but it's going to save you a whole lot of time and effort in the end. So we'll talk through a lot of these pieces of this, but basically you're going to fill all of these things out. I'm going to draw your attention to just a couple of things, and then we'll circle back to a few of these things. So as far as this goes, there's a few things, these tags that I want to draw your attention to, because we're going to talk a little bit more about those at the end. I'll show you at the end where we are going to see these once your store is actually live and your items are out there. But these are just words that you think that people can use to find you on Google or to find your product on Google or on Etsy. And then obviously you've got your pricing information, variations. So this is kind of a nice way to save time. Used to be back in the day that if you had, I don't know, 25 quilts and they were all identical, you had to list it 25 times, but you can actually just list one thing 25 times. You can do it with a quantity of 25. You can also even just change the color. So you can say, I have 5 blue quilts and I have 5 green quilts, and so on and so forth. And one of the benefits to that is that Etsy will keep your inventory for you, and they'll tell you when you start to run a little bit low on things. So as you're getting down to all of these things, you see this is all pretty standard stuff. So none of this is super surprising. So I'm going to show you a couple of other things that are in your shop manager before we go into some of the things that you're going to be looking to add into this listing that we're kind of looking at right now. So a lot of these things are really sort of self-explanatory, but I'm just going to zip through them a little bit just so that you can see what they are. So your messages are going to be when somebody is asking you about an item or they're asking you also if you're open to maybe commissioning something, if you'll take a commission. That's something that a lot of places, a lot of different stores will do. So that's a really great option for you. When you start to get those orders in, they'll come in here, and this is going to be right here where you'll see those orders. And you can also generate your shipping labels here. So it's a really handy place to have, a little bit of information. Your stats are here. So the stats are really great because it gives you an idea of where people found you. So if you're trying to figure out, because later on we're going to talk a little bit about your marketing, this will give you an idea of where to really focus your energy. So is it social media that you need to spend a little bit more time on? Or are you going to say, hey, I'm getting, most of my people through direct traffic, so I'm not going to bother. This will at least give you those pieces of information so that you can make that decision in a really rational way. Your finances are going to be basically where you get paid and your accounts. So this will tell you how much they have deposited in, how much they've taken out for those listing fees, all sort of things that you're probably pretty not surprised by that being what it is. Marketing, one of the things I wanted to show you that is really cool that they've started to do, this is pretty new, these search analytics. So we were talking a minute ago about where your traffic comes from on your site. This will actually tell you where it comes from, which is really, really cool. So this is a beta service. So they've I wouldn't say they just rolled it out, but it's been pretty recent that it has. So it's really, really cool. Once you start to see some traffic to your site, it's going to be a real beneficial thing for you, I think. Let me go back to that. And then we'll have ads and sales and coupons, which we'll talk about more in a sec. And then your social media and some of those things. So those are basically the things that you're going to find in your dashboard. I always try and give people sort of a little bit of an idea of where generally things are located before we really talk about the nuts and bolts of like what goes into those listings. And that's because the older that Etsy gets and the bigger that Etsy gets, the more complex I think it gets. And it is, I think, sometimes a little challenging to find what you're looking for. So it also changes pretty often. So when you can kind of start to think about like, okay, so I know that my portal for creating coupons used to be here. Where would I think it would be now? It may have moved around, but we can kind of generally figure out once we're pretty familiar where it went to. So if you log in 3 days and it's different, don't be shocked. I've absolutely had it change the day that I taught a class. So we figured it out together and it was super fun. So don't let it throw you for a loop. So now we're going to go ahead and get into some listings that I think will be useful, some things that I think will be useful for you to sort of think about. So really what a lot of this comes down to is photos. So much of it is photos and appearances. So it is pretty much everything here. So you're allowed 10 images. I think you probably all saw that. You also can upload a video. So if it's something that you're interested in playing around with, you can absolutely do that. I would very much encourage you, because you're already paying the 20 cents, to use all 10 of those images if you can. I'll click into a couple of these and you can sort of see what some of these listings look like. So I try and tell people that generally what you want to see for those images are a detail picture. So we've got something that's relatively close there, something with scale, something with your product in use, and then something overall. If you have a sizing chart, you can always use that as one of your things, and that can be really useful. This is one of those times that I always tell people too, that if you have something that is meant to be worn, like say in this case, a pair of earrings, it's great to have them on, even if it's just a mannequin. So I don't know about all of you guys, maybe you're better at this than I am, but I'm horribly spatially challenged. So when I am looking at a listing and it says it's 3 inches, I don't know what that is. I don't know, like spatially wise, like how much of my head is this going to be? So this kind of tells me when I look at it, exactly what I'm looking at here. So we can scroll through and you can see they've done a great job of, put it right up against this ruler. And so we know exactly how big it is. So just a couple of different angles, and then they've got some of their shipping information here. So this is one really good example. The other good example I always think is stuff like bags especially. It can be really, really hard. I'm sure you all know when you're shopping for stuff like this to figure out like, what is the drop like? What is, it's on your shoulder, like how far down is it going to fall? How large is this thing? So this store actually does a really good job with this. So you get all sorts of a, good idea here. A little bit in use. And then we've got something inside. And then they also have some of their socials on there. So you can certainly look at that as well. So these are really good things to think about. One thing that's come up in a lot of my classes over the years is folks that say, like, I have furniture. How do I do this with furniture? So one of the things I think you can do is think about items that, it's like that joke that you always see online, banana for scale, to help you figure out how big something is. So say I'm selling a table that I made. I would try and take my pictures so that I can see a doorway in the background maybe, or I'd put like a lamp on it. Even having chairs up to it can help. Anything that will kind of give someone a better idea of like, will this thing fit in my house? Will this thing fit through my door? So especially when you're making a big project, like a big sale like that, you want to be really, really sure, because you don't want to have it shipped back or anything like that. So any of those visual cues that you can give to make it really easy for the person who's buying from you to know exactly what they're getting is going to be the better. All good. So then you want to look at things like your lighting, your display. You can use cameras on your phone. I don't know if you guys have any green screen rooms or anything like that, but if you do, that is totally an option for you. But you can fix so much with really simple photo editing services now. So don't be too stressed out about that piece of it. People have skills, and photography isn't always one of them, but you should be able to do okay with your camera on your phone. So then the other thing I always like to talk about a little bit is, it kind of mentioned a little bit back in the beginning. If your shop or a product that you have has a story, this is the time. So now is the time to like let everybody know why it is you do the thing that you do. So I have featured a number of different things over the years. So one year I talked about this lady who lived in like New York, and everything she did was bee related, and they had like beehives, and so she could put bees in resin and all of this stuff. And so she had this really interesting story about why she loves bees so much. And then another year I had a couple that sandblasts their stuff together, and they had a video of the process of sandblasting on their page, which was really, really cool. People love stuff like that. I found this one the other day when I was looking around for some good new examples for you guys. And this is Moreville Pottery. So when I click into this, so I can see it's made in Michigan. And then when I look at it, I can see that this guy, the owner of this store, started working with vintage license plates because his grandpa gave him a lot of them when he died. So that's just a cool story. And it's that kind of thing that people really love when they buy for you, stuff from you. So a lot of times people love to be able to say, oh yeah, I got this because this guy got all of these from his grandpa when he died or whatever. People love a really good story. So if you've got something that you love to cross stitch because your mom taught you or whatever, this is a really good time to share that information. People love that. So let me just get to the next thing here. So other things you want to think about are like, what other products are there that are similar to yours on Etsy? And how do they list and how do they display their stuff? So I'm trying to think of some good examples. I know I work with a lady at my library pretty often who does just painted silk scarves, I think it is. So she came in to see me because she was having a little bit of trouble with her store. And we actually ended up going through some of these listings to see what other people were doing. And we just kind of went down the line and looked at a lot of them. And there are a whole lot. You guys can see there's 20,000 of them. And just said, okay, so what would you buy? Like, what really speaks to you? Is it this, hand-painted scarf of an octopus? Do you really like the way that they have staged this? What works for you? Take a look at the similar products as yours, look at their pricing, take a look at how they've staged them, figure out what you like, what you don't like, and then look at all of those reviews and see what people say that they like and they don't like. That stuff really makes a difference. And I'm kind of always a proponent of like faking this until you bake it. So you are basically doing market research when you're doing this. So we don't know yet because we're new to this. So let's let the research happen in this way. It makes it just a little bit easier on you. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about some of the pricing pieces of this. So basically what you want to do is we'll keep using our silk scarf sort of example here. So basically what you want to do is take a look at some products that are similar to yours, and make sure you're looking at the right sizes and that kind of thing, the same sorts of material. And then you're going to take a look and see what is the range of these things. So you're totally going to see things that are $5, and then you'll see things that are like $2,000. Like you're not going to get either one of those things. So where is like kind of the median of what you're seeing here? You really want to, especially when you're starting out, price as realistically as you possibly can, even a little on the low side, because you can go up pretty easily, but it's much easier to go up once you've gotten a few sales under your belt and you've gotten a little bit of the feedback on your account. It can be a little bit challenging to get started if your prices are too high. So you really want to price as attractively as possible, because a lot of times people will either continue coming back to you, or if you get them in by buying one thing, maybe then they see you've got something else on your account that isn't too expensive, and they'll throw it in because they're already paying shipping, so they might as well. So that's a nice thing to think about a little bit. Other ways that you can sort of diversify your pricing, other ways to think about this, especially when it's something like this, a silk scarf that has sort of expensive materials, you can think about the size of it. So my lady who does these was saying, you know, I can't go too low because these are really expensive scarves. When I buy them, they come from China, they're really, really pricey, and I will lose money at some point if I keep dropping my prices. So we talked about it a whole lot, and finally was like, well, what if we do like pocket squares? So, you know, that a man would buy, or probably more likely his wife or, you know, somebody would buy, and like tucked into a pocket. What about like scarves for like your dresser? Stuff like that, like things that you can use maybe even with some of your remnants, the stuff you have left over when you're done crafting, whatever it was you were crafting. And so she was able to start listing with some of those smaller things. So she still had those things on there that were $200 or $300, but then she also had the pocket squares that were like $35. And a lot of people have a much lower threshold for things that are $20 or $30, obviously, than they do for something that's $300 or $400. But then the nice thing is somebody sees your pocket square and they love it, and you give them the name of where you got the thing, and then you potentially have a new seller. And the other part of that that's really nice is, say I buy the pocket square for my husband, and then in a year I'm trying to think of a birthday present for my mother-in-law or something. Well, maybe I'll remember that this place also had really beautiful scarves. And so then I have that bit of information for when I'm ready to spend a little bit more money. So those are kind of some ways that you can get around that piece of it, because that can be really a tricky, I think, nut to crack. It can be hard. You want to consider sort of comparing your prices across eBay, Amazon, because Amazon does have some handmade, and also Etsy. So compare all three of them, just plug in generally what it is you do and sort of see what's out there. That'll give you a good idea of what to expect. You can create coupons, which I was telling you about. So to do that, you go up to the top of the page in that shop manager. And then if you go down, I believe it is under, marketing, and then sales and coupons. So you can do a whole bunch of things here, really. You can create new offers, or you can also create offers for like someone, like it says here, it's an abandoned cart. So they had stuff in their cart and they walked away. You can always send a campaign to give them some, 20% off of what they had in their cart. So use those tools because people love a good sale. Other things you can do, something that is not done as often now, but is still a thing a little bit. There's this thing called Pay It Forward, or just PIF. So when you search that, this is kind of a holdover from when Etsy first started, like, I don't know, it had to have been at least probably 15 years ago, maybe. So PIF is just Pay It Forward. And the idea back then, when Etsy was this small little sort of niche store, was here's a great deal on something. And you buy this and you just pay it forward at some point. So you give somebody a great deal down the line, or you can use this to get rid of some extra materials that you don't need for some project or something like that. So this is going away a little bit now, but you still reliably will see a couple hundred results here. And, sometimes you'll see something that has just it'll be 10% off or something like that. But a lot of times what you see is like things that are like 20 cents. And I've actually bought a ton of PIF over the years. And it's a great way to get exposure to a whole new store. The reason that I always tell folks to do this, though, is that if you are looking for earrings, say, so we search for PIF earrings and we come up with 162, and probably we figure part of those are just, it's a pig. We want a pig naturally. Or even, I think I even just did earring and I had a more reasonable number. So we had PIF earring and then we have 24 results. But then what happens when I just say earring? So now we have 5,673,000. So even though this isn't a thing that is as done as often as it used to be, it is really, really, really worth listing one or two things that way. Just included in those tags that we talked about, just that PIF doesn't need spaces, doesn't need periods, nothing like that, because it can really help to bring people in that never would have found you otherwise. I think that this is both the blessing and the curse of Etsy, is that it's so big. It's a blessing because you have all of these potential eyeballs that are going to be on your site. And you're going to get visibility here that you never could get, just by opening your own store somewhere, getting a GoDaddy or something like that. But that same thing is also the curse. You have to work a little bit harder to get eyeballs actually on your stuff. So this is one of those ways, even though it's sort of a throwbacky sort of way, it is a way that can help you to get some more eyeballs on your stuff. So definitely check that out. So it's always good to be ready anytime to adjust that pricing. So in the handout that I gave you guys, there is a really helpful article through the seller handbook. And the reason that I wanted to show it to you is called Creating a Small Business Budget. And when you scroll down, there are some things that'll be really helpful for you here. So there is an Excel worksheet and there's a Google Drive worksheet. If you click on that, it's going to bring up something here that'll give you a working document. So this is really nice for those of us who don't have a ton of business background. This is going to make you sit down and think a little bit about, what does it cost to make my product? And what kind of time does it take me? What do I value my time at? Do I have to pay for a place to make my thing? You put all of those things into this, and it will help you figure out how much you should price your thing at. So you may end up starting a little bit lower or a little higher than what it gives you, but it at least gives you a place to begin if you just don't know, because sometimes it can be a little bit overwhelming. I'm sure it's hard to price when you've spent a ton of time on something. So this is a little bit more of a objective way to look at that process. So definitely check that out. So then let's talk a little bit about our selling costs. So these do change pretty often, but these very basic selling costs that I'm going to tell you about, these have been the same for quite some time now. So essentially, this is going to be billed monthly to the credit card you provide. Etsy's added a whole lot of optional services over the last year or so, especially over the last year or so. But I would really stick with these basics until you kind of know what works for you. And then you can kind of branch out a little bit into some of the add-on services that they provide. So essentially what you're looking at is 20 cents for 4 months for each item, or until the item sells, whichever of those two things comes first. Etsy reminds you when you need to renew a listing, or you probably saw when we were looking at that listing screen, it'll tell you that you have the ability to do an auto renewal there. That means it just does it, and it'll let you know that it has auto renewed the thing. So if you are listing something that is like, I don't know, we said we had 25 quilts or whatever, it will charge you 20 cents for that initial listing. And then every time one of those things sells, it'll charge you another 20 cents. So it is per item that is actually sold when you list the multiples like that. So I always get that question. So I always try and remember to tell people. Once you've actually sold that quilt, they're going to take 5% of the sales price. And then they're also going to take, and that's the transaction fee. And then there will also be a 3% plus a 25-cent charge for the payment processing that happens through Etsy payments. So I think you'll have to believe me here when I tell you that it is so much better than having to mess with it all yourself. They didn't used to have the Etsy payments, and it was a real hassle. So it's kind of nice. It is well worth kind of paying that extra price there. When you're thinking about your pricing structures, you really want to think a little bit carefully beyond all the things that we already discussed, as well as things that are your shipping costs. So that's not just like, how much did it cost for me to stick it, in the mail and send it to you. That also includes envelopes, the cardboard backing, the packing peanuts, the tape, the boxes, any insurance. If it's a high value thing, it really might be your best bet to get insurance on that. Really useful to look into at least. But you want to keep that price as low as you possibly can, because anybody who has bought online knows that it is so frustrating to find like your pair of jeans on eBay or whatever that's $10 and you're like, hooray, but then the shipping's 25. And like, everybody who has bought online before kind of knows that they're just getting back their money from, that cheaper price up front. So one way you can kind of sort of normalize your shipping so that you know what you're going to pay is the post office flat rate shipping boxes. Right off the bat, depending on the size, what it'll fit in, how much your shipping will be. So that's something to kind of look into a little bit. As we were scrolling through that dashboard in the payments section in that shipping, it has a calculator in there when you're listing that will tell you kind of like how much the shipping will be depending on where it goes. So that's basically your selling costs. That's what you can kind of expect generally what to pay. So things that you should not ever list. So anything less than 20 years old as vintage, it'll get removed, and sometimes people get banned for that. Resold items. So what that kind of means is like, you'll see pretty often somebody goes to Target and they buy a pair of shoes and then they turn around and try and resell it on Etsy. Like, yeah, sometimes they're going to get away with it, but for the most part, like they do have teams of people who watch for stuff like that. And they'll eventually catch you. So the difference there is, say you buy shoes and then you paint them or do something to them and sell them. That's a-okay. You do you. It's just that sort of resale thing, unless it's meant to be a vintage item, is something that they are pretty strict about on Etsy. Anything infringing upon intellectual property. So basically that's just I can't say this is official White Sox merchandise or this is official Disney. You know, they're going to look pretty poorly on that. Also, obviously, anything illegal. And then the last thing I had on your sheet is food or alcohol before researching the laws in your county and in your state. So there are some caveats to that. So sometimes it's actually okay. I had somebody maybe a year or two ago in one of my classes whose daughter sells chocolates on Etsy, but she was in Kane County, I want to say. And in Kane County, apparently it's okay if it's made in a commercial kitchen. So she was able to show that she used a commercial kitchen to make this thing, so then she could do it. So if you're thinking about getting, you know, sticking your toe in on something that's edible, just take a look at the actual, the laws and the statutes for your county is usually the easiest way to figure that out. So now let's talk about promotion. So obviously we've talked about so many items on Etsy. We know we've got to promote, but you have a lot of tools that you can use to do that. Some of them are paid, but most of them are free, honestly. You just got to kind of think a little bit about where you tend to find stuff like that. So we had talked a little bit about that tagging when we were going through the listing. And I had said then that I was going to show you where you would find that. So like, let's just click on one of these. So when you're in an actual listing, you can usually see it if you scroll all the way to the bottom. So these explore related searches are usually what tags they have used. So if you're trying to figure out what tags you should use on your own stuff, look at a similar product as yours and look at the tags that they used. You can have 13 of them and you should use all of them. Some of them can be colors, some of them can be like what the actual thing is. So we would want to put earrings in there. We would want to put weddings and stuff like that, whatever it is you think maybe somebody might use your stuff for. Speaking of weddings, Etsy does actually support registries. So if your thing is something that could show up on a baby registry or a wedding registry, or maybe like housewarming, throw that in your tags because you'll be able to get that extra traffic for that. Other things, favorite stores and other users, and they often will reciprocate. So this is mostly true if like Leslie has maybe she's got a fabric store or something like that. And I buy a lot of my fabric from her and I make my quilts and then I sell them. I would probably like her store then, or favorite her store rather. And sometimes it works that those things, people will find one through looking at the other. So they follow Leslie, they see that I also follow Leslie and she follows me, and then they come to me as well. So sometimes that can work out for you if you are sourcing your stuff through Etsy. Obviously, use social media, Instagram, Facebook, and Pinterest. So things that are really visual already. Some people tell you to use Twitter. I've never found Twitter particularly useful because it's just not as visual as these other services are. But if you're getting some good feedback that way, go for it. Just think too about what you're comfortable with using on a regular basis, because then you won't be miserable doing it. Because we know you like to craft, maybe not necessarily social media about crafting. So you can create social media pages. So I think I have, let me just pull up a friend of mine here. I have a friend who has her page is SEM Illustrations. So hers is linked to her store. And one of the things I like about it is she uses her page, which is just purely for her Etsy store, to funnel people back to her Etsy. She also uses it when she is out in the community, like say she does a farmer's market or she's at craft fair or something like that. It's also a really good spot for her to do, you know, and she's done it here for her Threadless, but she's also done it as well before for her Etsy for sales and stuff like that. So it's a good way to get people to follow you here and bring them back on over to that Facebook or to that Etsy page that you've got going. And people will follow you here and then see stuff you like, and then will go buy it in your Etsy store. So it's a really good option to know about. So then the other thing that you can do is use Pinterest. So a lot of people do this. So there is the Pinterest bookmark that you've got up there. That's a pinning bookmark. You can find your own stuff. So you search for your own things here. That will be like your shop name, Etsy, and then silk scarves or whatever it is. You can pin your own stuff. And then the pin will always go back to that Etsy store as long as it still is alive. So that's a really good way to get a lot of traffic to go to your Etsy store. For a long time, we had in Barrington, where I work, where my library is, a Made in Barrington board on Pinterest. And it was like, some of it was like brick and mortar stuff, like, you know, somebody made something cute. And so we would post a picture of it and link it back to their store. But a lot of it was the Etsy stores. And I remember doing something that was like baby blankets or something like that got repinned, I don't know, 15,000 times before I turned off the notifications. So it really can make a big difference depending on what the thing is, to go ahead and just save your own stuff. So that's a good thing to kind of think about there. If you have business cards, which is sometimes a good thing to make, you can get them done really cheap. You guys probably know more about these than I do, but like Vistaprint, I know forever has sales on them. You can tuck them into packages. When you sell stuff, you can give them out at craft fairs, wherever you happen to be. And they're just really good promotion and something that people can sort of look at to check back on later. You can include a picture on those to kind of help people remember what the thing it is that you do. So they'll remember, oh, that's right, that's the lady I was talking to about the quilts or whatever. So that's all really useful stuff to have. If you possibly can, one of the things that I always really suggest to get people coming back to you after they've like already purchased something is, if you do something that has the ability for this, tuck a little something extra into the package when you ship it out. So I always give the example of this lady that I buy soap from pretty often. She does like those big, like kind of loaf soaps, and then they cut off slices and sell them by that. So one of the things that I've always really liked that she does is she has like those little ends, you know, the bits that are kind of like irregular. She will save those, and then she puts them in the packages along with, you know, the soap you actually purchased. So say I purchased my chamomile soap or whatever, I might have 5 or 6 little odds and ends in there that are just like a little like lavender soap or something like that. And she just labels them. And that way I know that I really like that one, or I very much don't like that one, for the next time I want to buy. It is great promotion, and it doesn't cost her anything because she's already made it. And she's also just getting rid of something that she can't use. So it's just a win for pretty much everybody. You know, it could also be like a pair of earrings or something like that you don't think you're going to be able to sell. Just take them down, stick them in the package. Could be a little leftover beads or something like that. So tuck a little note in there, put your little freebie in there, maybe the business card, maybe a little bit of a coupon, anything that makes it feel a little bit more, I think, like they're getting a gift in the mail, is going to be something that's going to get people to come back to you really often. So those are all good things to sort of think about. So then let's talk a little bit about some market research. So I always sort of generically call this market research. So when you look at your Etsy page. You're going to see the stuff that you clicked on most recently, right? Which we know. And then there's going to be the picks for you, which is also stuff you clicked on. They're like, we think you would like this because you liked this. You clicked on it and you said you liked it. But then past that, you'll see like prints and scarves and things that are local. They have all sorts of interesting kinds of gift sort of buying guides and stuff like that. I often really recommend that people go into these and take a look and see what it is here. Maybe gifts. What kind of stuff are they pulling up here? Like, what do you think all of these people are doing really, really well? So take a look at some of these things and see what you like and what you don't like. You can also take a look too on Etsy, on Pinterest, because we were just over there. Let's zip over there again. So we can say painted silk scarf. Let's see if it's willing to do it. So the reason that I always suggest that people do this is we know that, you know, some of these people probably pinned their own stuff, right? Like we were talking about doing, but a lot of these are like somebody pinned this because they saw it on Etsy. They wanted to remember it for later because they loved it so much. So you can take a look here and really easily and just in a very visual way, sort of see what other people have loved just so much that they want to remember it for later. I always think that this is a really good thing to be able to kind of look at pretty regularly, really. And two, like if you're pinning your own stuff to Pinterest too, this will give you a good idea for stuff that's really hitting really well. So if I am making my quilts and literally one of them is pinned all the time and then nothing else is, then I can take a look at that one and say, what is it about this one that is kind of striking a chord with people? So it's a good piece of information for you to have. So I want to show you, if I can go back here, where to go if you're getting stuck. So this was like our really quick and dirty, like we talked for an hour, but we could talk for hours and hours and hours because there's so much here. But if you are getting stuck and you need a little bit of help, there's some really good resources for you guys to know about. So if you go all the way to the bottom of the page, any page in Etsy has this all the way to the bottom. You're going to see this seller handbook here. And this is so helpful. Really, I use this pretty constantly. So this can be good for anything from like promotion. So you can see there's like there that's like getting found. That's all that is. Branding and marketing, all of that stuff, kind of all of a piece. Or you're trying to figure out how to deal with shipping to another country or something. They've got articles on all those things. Also great, I always like to tell people about a very useful taxes page. We don't really talk about that in this class because it's just a real naughty kind of, there's a lot to it, but they actually have an amazing article about this. If you just plug taxes in there, this will tell you, and it's done by Intuit, so it's a tax professional. What do I need to think about? What kind of records do I need to keep? And what should I kind of expect? So I always really recommend taking a look at that handbook because it really does run the gamut from like, how do I take pretty pictures to like, how do I track my expenditures? So it really covers the gamut. Other things that you can do, look at, if you're Googling the question, I just want to encourage you to be really careful to look at the date that the thing that you are, the result that you click on is posted. We do know that Etsy changes really often, and they have especially changed a lot in the last year or so. So I just don't want you to look at really old information, especially when you're spending a lot of your time on this. So do take a look at that. There's a lot of videos on YouTube that can walk you through some of these things. One of the other things I wanted to point out to you is on your own website, on Addison Public Library's website, you guys have Udemy. which is sort of a learning database. They have videos about Etsy on there that can walk you through some of the pieces of this. You get kind of stuck on something, or maybe you need some new ideas. There's also Creative Bug, which is like small craft projects generally, usually tends to be pretty fast craft projects. So if you just need some inspiration for some new projects, that can be a really great place to go as well. So I'm